Hey, thanks for joining me. I hope you're taking care of yourself out there. I would love to see you in the classroom, but we got to make do as long as we have to have virtual learning. But today's lesson is going to be on Mark Twain. We've been studying Shakespeare, and we did the video on Romeo and Juliet. So I just wanted to take us away from the English authors for a while and maybe talk about some of the American authors that you have in your lessons and assignments. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain was born in 1835 and lived until 1910. He was known as a humorist. That is, he had dry wit, and it's sort of like being a comedian, except he wrote novels and he wrote short stories. Now, his real name was Samuel Clemens, but Mark Twain was his pen name, and we'll talk about that later on in the lesson. Okay, I know that you recognize Mark Twain from Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. You've probably read those, or we're supposed to read those when you're in high school. But you're not going to need to know anything about them right now. The main thing that is in your lessons would be about the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County. And you also just need to remember for test purposes that Mark Twain was considered a humorist. I'll try to give you a slight hint when I see one of the test questions that I've seen before coming along, so just pay attention. Okay, fun fact. Mark Twain was an elementary school dropout. That's right, he quit school in the 5th grade, but he did say that he educated himself later in public libraries. Another fun fact, but also a weird fact, is that he was interested in parapsychology. And the reason for that was because in 1858, his brother, whom he was very close to, died in a steamship accident. And Mark Twain had predicted this 2 months earlier. And Mark Twain also predicted his own death. When he was born in 1835, Halley's Comet was streaking through the sky. Now, this comet only comes around every 75 or 76 years. But Mark Twain said, I came in with Halley's Comet and I expect to go out with it. And he sure did. He died the next time Halley's Comet appeared, and he was 75. But Mark Twain also had a very serious side. He was called a realtist. Now, don't forget that one either. He was a humorist and he was a realtist. Test question. That is, he used a style of writing that represented people as they actually are. Not as some people act to be or want to be or pretend to be. He saw right through people, and that's the way he portrayed them in his books and his short stories. And this actually comes from a passage in your lesson about Mark Twain that I'm going to read to you. It says, behind his backwoods humor is a message that speaks against the illusions people face in American life. For example, his famous literary work, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, is not a hymn to boyhood, but rather a depiction of the grim, harsh realities of a society that upholds slavery. And not only is this found in Huckleberry Finn, but you can also find references to the way he felt about slavery in Tom Sawyer. But right now, we're going to talk about, there's one assignment in one of your English lessons about how the Mississippi River affected Mark Twain's writings. And now let's don't get that confused with Life on the Mississippi, which is actually a memoir written by Mark Twain, about himself. So the assignment calls for you to talk about how the Mississippi River affected him in his writings. But if we go to the book, which is Life on the Mississippi, it tells us a lot about how the Mississippi affected him. Now, Mark Twain is actually a steamship term from a steamship on the Mississippi River. It actually means mark number 2, which was like a measurement on a line that measured the depth of a steamboat. So he actually named himself gave himself a pen name that has to do with the Mississippi River. Now, Mark Twain actually became a steamboat pilot in his life, but that career was cut short because of the Civil War and there was no traffic on the Mississippi River. he wrote about the Mississippi River and said, the Mississippi River towns are comely, clean, well-built and pleasing to the eye and cheering to the spirit. The Mississippi Valley is as reposeful as a dreamland. Nothing worldly about it, nothing to hang a fret or worry upon. So he just kind of depicted lazy southern times and towns. Also, from his book on the life on the Mississippi, he says an interesting thing, that he has two actual views of the river. So this might be something good to add into an essay. His two views on the river is where he compares it from the life of an innocent young boy to the experienced pilot's eyes of the steamboat. And he says, I had lost something which could never be resolved to me while I lived. All the grace, the beauty of the poetry had gone out of the majestic river. So that sounds like something that might be interesting to explore, to put in an essay that you have to do about the Mississippi River and Mark Twain. Now, you've got this story on English 3 called The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County that you're supposed to read. But, you know, it's such a good story, I don't want you to have to read it to yourself. So I'm going to read it to you. Let me see, how many pages is that? It's about 6 pages. Now, you must think I have lost my mind. If you think I'm going to read 6 pages to you, and you're probably saying, this woman done lost her mind, she thinks I'm going to sit here while she reads 6 pages to me. Well, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to give you a short summary, and bear with me if I have to look down a lot at my notes. Okay, so it's a story about a frog named Daniel Webster, who's owned by a man named Jim Smiley. Now, Smiley spent about 3 months training this frog to jump really high. And so he goes into town and he starts a $40 bet that his frog can outjump any frog that anybody has. So there's this stranger in town and he says, well, I'd take that bet if I only had a frog. And so Jim Smiley says, well, I'll go get you a frog. So Smiley runs out and gets him a frog. But while he's gone, the stranger gets the frog that Smiley was going to use, and he pours lead shot down him. So he just opens his mouth wide and pours some lead shot down him. So Jim Smiley gets back so excited because he thinks he's going to win this $40 bet. And so the jumping contest starts. Well, Daniel Webster, Jim Smiley frog, just sat there. Another frog just started jumping around, going crazy, and just jumped off. So Smiley was mad. I mean, he had lost his $40 bet. Well, he paid the man. The man went on about his business. And so Smiley just sat there looking at his frog. And finally, the frog burped out the lead shots, or burped out a few of them. So, oh boy, then Jim Smiley knew what the stranger was up to. And boy, don't we know, he ran fast to get his $40 back, but he never caught him. So, I probably gave you, in today's lesson, probably about 5 or 6 answers to some test questions if you have been looking on. Of course, I don't get to see the test questions until somebody asks me, can you help me with this? But so far, it's been my experience that I have covered a lot of test questions for you. So I hope you're paying attention. All right, that wraps up today's lesson. And you let me know if there's any lesson that I can do for you, any assignment to go over, any papers you want me to look at before you submit them, or any test questions you absolutely cannot find. If you will, please email me. I will be glad to help you. See you later and take care.